So imagine this. What strong character would you recommend to someone who is new to Granblue Fantasy before August of 2025? Would you recommend A. Sigriff, easy to pick with big normals, good special and will on stand mix-up. He can be very slow, sure, but his fireball works as a shield to close the gap easily, and a very good corner pressure, which is basically his win condition. Catalina has the best normals of the game, a very solid defense, has the most batshit insane corner carry combos, and you can close the gap easily with 236U, which is basically the best special of the game. However, it requires a very strong fundamental and a correct use of FIU, mainly because you want to play as her in mid range, mainly because her normals has a very good range that allows her to play a very safe poking game, and if the opponent tries to retaliate, Catalina can respond with FIU. Like Wall. Basically, like Wall works as a parry in single hit moves and can lead to a massive damage combo as a counter. So yeah, Beatrice, of course, is a DLC character, so not everyone can have her. But she's literally Soul Bad Guy from Guilty Gear with all his toolkit incorporated. So basically, Beatrice is a monster of a rush down character. Can skip neutral with 2-2x, overwhelm the opponent with a very aggressive pressure and a command grab to force them to do something before they get eaten alive. What do these three characters have in common? Well, instead of following the Choto archetype, of course, they play Granblue and the strongest. What I mean, they had a very good 6-6L to start the offensive. The three of them have very good normals that allow them to poke the enemy in a safe distance or start a pressure from them. And of course, their special. All of three of them has very good special. But there is a character that does a lot of damage, can control the neutral game perfectly. You don't even need to learn combos, honestly. But in order to gain all of this, you're gonna have to learn how to play Granblue in a very different way, and no, that's not Wilnas. I am talking about the Dragon Lady, Versusia. 1 year ago, I made a video called trying to get into S+ rank as Birra. Back then, the game was a lot different than we have today. I mean, that was the time where Nier was the SSS tier. But during that month, I was still new to the game, and I was learning everything I could as Birra. Her pressure, her save buttons, how to gain a install as early as possible, etc. And thanks to that, I managed to get into S+ rank at the end of July. Back then, the game was kinda more harder to grind out. Basically, S++ pack is what today is S++. So basically what I'm trying to say is that nowadays it's a lot easier to get master in quotation marks. It is easier compared to the Wild West that was back then in August of 2024, and back then master rank was this very prestigious rank. Nowadays, it's equivalent of getting to master in Street Fighter. I mean, you are better than everybody else, but basically the journey has only begun and you still have a lot of new things to learn. After that video was done, I stopped playing the game entirely. Because back then, Lydia just dropped as the second DLC character of Season 1 of Tekken 8. And trust me, I played the rest of the season like a madman until Season 2 came out, and yeah, that's another video for another time. By the way, it was until April that I decided to go back to the game as Birra, and yeah, I started to realize she wasn't my type of character, so I ended up dropping her because honestly, most of the time I feel like it was an uphill battle. And trust me guys, I'm not saying that beer is terrible. I am just saying that I lack the proper skill to make her work as properly. It wasn't until the end of June of this year I decided to go back to the game, and for real this time, like I didn't drop it at all. But this time I came back as Versusia. I have bought the DLC since the day 1, but I never picked her because that was the time I decided to drop the game temporarily, which turns out to be 1 year. I buy her because I really like her design, the red skin with the beautiful blue hair, those 4 arms, the fact that she's tall and intimidating. Keep in mind, I don't even watch the trailer, so I didn't know back then what she was doing in the first place. I literally picked her up because I really love her. After all this long introduction out of the way, this is what I learned after playing non-stop during 2 months as her. What are the most important aspects of her gameplay? What are the flaws that I had to work around, the weakness, the habits I had to build up, how to play like a decent player, how to change my mentality to be an intermediate player, etc. After all of this, let's begin the actual video. Okay, let's start by the beginning. What is like to play Granblue, like Granblue itself? Let's use for example the Jita, since she is the best example of the fundamentals of the game. Strike throw. Basically, her walk speed is very fast and her dash is also very fast. What I mean is that she can basically close the gap very easily and go for a 6L or a close leg to do strike throw, where she can trick track a close L into a throw. 6L is basically one of the best moves of the game because this move basically skips the neutral at mid range. On block, this move alone is +2, which basically allows the Jita to continue her pressure or do the following: backdash to make a move with, she can basically go for a grab, or better, go for another 6L. What does this have in common with the mentioned before? Well, the opponent has to do something because you cannot react to grabs in this game. I mean, you technically can, but it's a little bit harder to pull out. And you can also stop at 6L with a 2M and get a mythic combo. What I'm trying to say is that you force the opponent to press a button, and from that you have to play your own cards to make that move with or head block, and from there you can punish it or continue your pressure. This is basically the main core of Granblue. Make the opponent make a mistake and benefit from it. But I also want to mention that 6L doesn't make a good character by itself, it's also the other moves. For example, the Jita 2-2M is also a very good low poke that forces the opponent to be ready to block low at all times. Her special also allows her to build a solid game plan. Fireball is the best keep out tool and the best get in tool because it can be also used as a shield to get close to the opponent. As I mentioned before, 2-1-4 is a very good with punish move, sure, but it also has the utility of being a very decent corner carry tool. Also the fact that the Jita comes with a TP that basically gives her a very good defensive tool in the corner, and her 5U allows her to create another type of frame traps in the corner. So yeah, basically the Jita whole stick is creating strike throw scenario and creating some type of frame traps, and also has the necessary tools to get a good pressure and force the opponent to make a mistake. So what about Versusia? Well, keep in mind that I played a lot of Verra, so I was very used to be always on my opponent's face. As Versusia, things were different. I couldn't do it right away. Versusia walk speed is very slow, so you're kinda forced to use her big normals to poke at this range, and especially use your specials very careful to close the gap. Her dash is also slow. It has a start out where she will gain speed the more time is hold. However, the main issue with this is that we cannot just run and apply L because, well, the start up gives the opponent enough time to counter us. Basically, every time I try to play as her as Tejita, I will just lose the set. That was really hard to get used in the first day because it's basically changing as a whole your mindset and game plan. But this brings an important question. How do we even touch our opponent? Well, let's start by something easy to understand. Something I understood right away in my first day as playing as her. So, we have two important moves, 2-2M and 2-6M. 2-2M is a slow fireball that can work as a safe way to close the gap because you can use it as a zoning tool or as a kind of shield. Keep in mind that if you use it as a type of shield, at max range is like 9 frame plus on blocks, so it's safe to apply pressure, but be ready to hit DP, and if you see your opponent doing DP, just pay it. However, the biggest downside and something I keep struggling even at master rank is that if your opponent catches up this pattern, it can easily be jumped over. I mean, it's kinda hard to dodge roll because the different fireballs have different timings, but it's really easy to jump over it. However, our main zoning tool is 2-6M, a fire pillar. Because with this one we can lock down our opponent and get it close very slowly but safe, but the most important use is that on hit it has a knockdown, so we are able to close the distance more safely. But I want to make this quick note, is that Versusia isn't a zoner. It's kinda hard to explain, but yet she has so many tools that can utilize, but to put it simply, and something I had to figure it out in S++ rank, is that she has to control the neutral gameplay in order to gain the advantage and start her own pressure with her big buttons. However, this was something that I will figure it out until much later, so basically in the earlier days, yeah, I was playing her as a zoner. It's something I will never recommend do it even if you are learning how to even use her in the first place, because it's a very easy beginner strat to fall on. So it's time to talk about her normals. This was the hardest thing to get used to, and especially on defense. See, not only her mobility is like a snail's, her normals are also very slow. For example, her close L is 7 frames, while her 2L is like 6. Other characters close L are 5 frames, like it's a world of difference. That means, especially on defense, Versusia cannot challenge the pressure like everybody else, and she has to spend more time blocking, like a lot, or use PC to escape this type of situation more easily. Aspira, that will be like a loose condition, but with Versusia, things are a little bit complicated because, of course, blocking always is going to be our downfall, but at the same time, sometimes you can turn the tables in your favor. Okay, Moth, that sounds like a terrible character. What do you say she's strong? Well, my friend, Versusia doesn't have a far-like attack. This is the range of his 5L, and yes, from this range you can get an auto combo. And as soon we're gonna learn, that means we can put our opponent to the next corner easily. But let's go slowly. What makes up from slow normals are the range, because Versusia has the biggest buttons of the game. Even can challenge characters like to be, okay, maybe not, but you kinda get the point. Just look at this far M. You see this range? And it's safe. And 2M, it almost has the same range as Secret's 2M, like, look at this far edge. And the best part of this particular button is that you can basically do a follow-up on Weave. Like, you can turn this button into a mix-up. You can do the follow-up on Weave, you can do the follow-up on Block, or you can do nothing and wait the opponent to try to counter it only to bait it and it hits with punish. Like, imagine the possibilities. Like I said, this is a video called What I Learned about Versusia. Unfortunately, I won't take a whole advantage of these moves until Master Rank, or to put it a better word, until the end of September. But here's the point, like the actual point, is that we are not supposed to run towards opponent. We can approach them slowly and poke them with our big buttons. Even if they are slow, this is the best part that I was going to mention until now, is that if you had a really hit confirmed reflex, you can turn any of these slow hits into a corner carry combo. You're gonna see about that in the C3 to H section, so wait for it, it's going to be very special. Speaking of which, before we talk about her special, it is very important we mention this very fundamental aspect of her game plan first. Okay, something that has nothing to do with the top. During the time I was playing as Pirra, my game plan as her always revolved about getting the install as earlier as possible. So, can you believe that Versusia has something very similar about it? 5U is a button that hits Versusia above. This buff affects all your special, we're gonna see about that. Also improves the 5U itself, but we don't speak of that. Basically, if you pick this savvy where you're above after every knockdown, or in the neutral where nothing is happening, trust me guys, you basically are getting your win condition by 3 and you can start and playing an insane pressure as her. But slowly, slow things first. So I can finally start talking in deep about her special. So let's go back to the pillar. Her menu 1 is our main zoning tool. However, something I will struggle around S++ rank is that people just run over it and start the pressure again. So what you can do to stop them? Well, we can use like pillar. I had to mention this because I feel like it's a very underrated tool, because this move appears in front of you. It's a very helpful tool to stop people who try to approach us with a dash. But I had to mention this, that in this particular case, I mean, if you see that they run over your 2-3-6M, the next time they try to close the distance, you have to use the like version. We're gonna elaborate more on this, but you have to keep in mind that as Versusia, you have to pay a lot of attention of what your opponent does in neutral. But I can see why people don't use the light version very often, because the real deal is the heavy version. The heavy version, it has a very fast start up, and the best of all, it tracks mid-screen. It tracks. So basically this is our best jumpscare button at mid-screen. Basically, if you see your opponent trying to close the gap, you can use 2-3-6 as a way to stop them and get a very meteor hard knockdown. Of course, you have to still time it well, because other times you can clip mid animation, but it's a very helpful tool. It is also a very helpful tool to stop Sooners, but this is a very tricky one. But to give you a basic idea, since it is mid-screen, you have to kinda get close to them, which is already hard. So to put it simply, against Fairy and Eustace you can shut them down very easily. Against Metera is a very difficult one task but doable. But once you hit that hit, you can basically rush them down and apply your pressure. 2-2H or the heavy fireball is kinda hard to explain very accurately what it does, but it's a very good way to end strings because it puts you back with plus frames. It can be also used in neutral at mid-range, but the real meat and potatoes of this move is in the corner, because it's our best way to reset our pressure and force our enemy to make a mistake. By the way, all the version of this fireball on both teleports Versusia above the enemy, on block and on hit. I mentioned this because I always forgot to use it because I always use the buff for the Lariat and the it isn't a reversal, but let's say the Dragon Punch for simplicity, because those gives you a better reward. I mentioned this because probably one of you guys can figure it out a better way to use this move with boss, but so far I never figured out how to use it. I am not going to talk in depth about Cis-32H, which is 9 boss, because this move in particular deserves its own section. So let's see about our medium version. Our medium version is our best kept out move if they are trying to rush us down. Also it can be used as a decent anti-air, but be mindful that it can be air blocked, so yeah. By the way, the large version also works perfectly for anti-airs, but only works if the enemy is jumping in a very weird angle. Also be very mindful of the range because on whiffs you are going to get punished very badly. 214, the Lariat move, I hope I pronounced that well because my English is very bad. This is our best move for mid-range. The last version is kinda hard to explain too because it's a very good way to kinda catch off guard your opponent, and it's safe on block, which is very important because the medium and heavy version of the moves are unsafe, but it keeps you off your turn, so it's something that you must don't spam, because I think from personal experience, but the main reason I was hard stuck in S++2 ranks in August was because I was abusing too much this move. I gave my opponent a lot of free turns. The medium version is a combo tool, but the main reason you almost not see the light version being used is because the heavy one version is much better. It does a lot more damage and has a better startup, and in the corner is a very good way to get a combo starter. So why is that? I just mentioned before that it's very unsafe on block. Well, with both you can make the heavy version safe on block, which is really important because this allows you to use this move as a jump scare button. However, the same issue applies with the light version, but much worse. See, even though you are making it safe, the spamming this move is basically wasting buffs that could be used better in the heavy version of Nimbus, which honestly is also a mistake I am guilty of. So yeah, this is a very good button for jump scare on opponents who try to close the gap between us. It's also very useful when you are zoning, because if they are trying to close the gap, they are going to be hard focused in avoiding everything that boom, they get hit by the Lariat. So yeah, my experience using this move was very good, but as I mentioned before, you kinda had to use it more sparingly because the main purpose of this move is to catch off guard your opponent. If you're spamming it a lot, they are going to be ready to block it. And if they block it, you wasted a buff or your turn entirely. Okay, this wasn't a guy. This was kinda my first impression as Versusia. At the beginning I was playing her as a Sooner, and I'm using a lot to 1.4 because A, it is very safe, the light version. It was really hard to put this into words what I was doing wrong back then, because somehow this kinda worked in this level. Like, I was winning games sometimes, but here's the important thing. This isn't a good game plan, like there's no game plan at all. But this put me in this very dangerous illusion, because back in August around S++5 I was winning games but inconsistently, and I was losing a lot of games. And weirdly enough, losing games was consistent because there was something going on back there. But since there were the times it worked, basically I didn't have any idea what I was doing wrong exactly. Now, in retrospective, I can clearly tell that I was doing wrong, because yes, swinging against characters like Galleon is literally winning the game, but doing the same against other characters was kinda harmful, because the pillars can give you a good knockdown that allows you to close the gap, but I wasn't doing that. I was just standing there ready to fire another pillar. Now, this isn't exactly wrong, because sometimes it kinda hurts to figure out how your opponent likes to approach you, but I was doing anything. I was just sitting back there. And as I mentioned before, abusing the lag lariat was also a big factor, because it is safe on blocks, sure, but I was giving up my turns most of the time, which means my opponent can have a lot of opportunities to mix me up and force me to make a mistake. Even if you have excellent defense, it's kinda hard to have a good defense in the long terms. Eventually you're going to open up. I was hard stuck in S++2. Like, from that floor I configured out a way to win games, because other players would just wipe the floor with me. And it was hard because I didn't have any idea what I was doing wrong, so I was literally smashing my head against the wall trying to figure out what wasn't working. So after a long time I decided to take off my replay from my private account, or not so private now. See, this is the funny thing that you might be wondering all this time, because this gameplay I'm showing you right now is too good for a SS Plus rank. What I mean is that the footage you're looking right now is from my other account, which I use for streaming purposes. By the time I start recording again around S++3, my account was already at 300 crystals in master rank. Why I do that is because having a private account is a lot more easier to ask for help. You can share your own replays and get an excellent feedback. So after seeking feedback in the Versusia core, by the way, a big shout out to the Versusia core for helping me a lot during these 3 agonizing months, and special thanks to my good pals Slamunga, Fox, and especially Bibiona. I am really sorry if I say those names very sound wrong, but thank you guys for helping me so much. So yeah, after getting a lot of feedback, and trust me guys, it took me like 2 months to change things, because there was a lot of things that it needed to change. As a side note from me editing this video, I highly recommend watching this video made by Ray, because trust me, you're gonna have a better time polishing your fundamentals than me trying to pull them in this very late state. There is a very good reason I did mention the singular move when I was talking about Versusia normals. So as we established before, we have our 6L, but sometimes it isn't good enough. It pushes us too far that we can only do a 5L or 2N, which means it isn't necessarily bad by itself, but basically using it as a Pressure tool is a big commitment sometimes, and because of our dash startup we cannot do 2 CCL in a row like everybody else. I mean, we can't put a very close range pull at that range or the opponent has enough time to kinda hit us with a button. So during my journey to master rank, in earlier August I was hard stuck in S++2 because, as I said before, I was losing games but in a very consistent way. So it was until I met my good old friend Viviana, and yes, I said his name wrong, and fucking sorry man, the best Versusia player I ever saw, that consistently holds the title of Grandmaster. So he told me a very important information. You Silhead, you kinda had to give them a reason to smash, because with my current offensive they can basically block forever and never put them in a bigger risk. So how do I can open up? Well, of course you can throw them, but most of the time they touch, which tells us something very important about how they react in pressure. But I was taking advantage of that, so I need to figure it out a way I can force them to smash a button in a way that I can bait it and punish them for it. Even it's better than our own CCL. See, most other 2L are -2 on block. Mainly this move is often used as a way to check if your opponent is blocking low, or to use it in a high-low mix-up on Oki. On the other hand, Versusia 2L is +3 on block. Yes, you heard me right. The move alone could be even considered as our 6L made our home. This move allows Versusia to do block strings like 2L to L to U or 2L 5L that can loop into a heavy 9 boss mix-up or a heavy fireball for a ripoff. And since it has decent range, we can use it to stagger or to delay in order to force our opponent to press a button. And as mentioned before, since we cannot dash in neutral, every time we get a knockdown or we have our opponent in the corner, this move allows us to do a tick throws, a mix up with close heavy, and if you are better than me, you can use 2L into axis L to keep the pressure going on. But that's not all. Since we are dashing towards our enemy, sometimes we can just decide not to dash and use a big normals for space traps. Basically, we have our opponent in the corner, so they no longer know if it's safe to approach or we are going to rush down and press buttons in their faces. And thanks to your specials, we can basically control the corner in a long range. Thanks to him, I was finally doing something in S++2. I stopped being too passive and expecting my opponent to make a mistake on his own in order to win the game. I was being more active. After hitting a knockdown, I was crouching down instead of trying too soon. And thanks to him, I started to throw more the person. And as mentioned before, even if they take the throw, it's no problem because that's mean they're pressing a button and we can start pressure them in a certain way to make sure we can catch them off guard. And again, thanks to him, I started to win games more often. But there's also another very important move that allows me to rank up quick. But he also teach me one of the most important moves that I never use often in neutral and especially on the offensive. Also the very main reason why we don't want to waste our buff in the Lariat. Dimbus Heavy is a game changer. This move is very important. As I mentioned before, we tend to be in the corner a lot more often than other characters, since our normals are a lot slower and we don't have a meterless Dragon Push. However, if you land an auto combo and have buff, you can do Ultimate Fireball or the double Ultimate Fireball route. The first one is very useful and the second one does the same damage as a super skybound arc, but it needs the whole super bar to work. But heavy 9 boss is our go-to-go corner carry combo route. From 2N or 2U, we can castle it into a heavy 9 boss with buff and then boom, in the corner we are. Of course, it isn't the only road, there's a lot more and especially one that it connects it to a super. But this is what is working for me for most of the time. It is very important to have this combo practice, because we just went from being in a very disadvantageous position to having our opponent in the corner. Even if they don't land right away in the corner screen, we can push them a little further with our big normals and specials. However, that's not all at all. I mentioned it multiple times that Versusia pressure can be hard to pull off sometimes, but that's with 9 boss heavy. We can cancel it from a 2M or 2U on block. You follow me, right? This is our bread and butter, the mix of on block. We can just do a heavy jump while we land and follow it up with a 2L or a close heavy if I try to delay smash, or we can just land and throw them. And the best of all of them are safe jumps, so basically if they try to DP, they are going just to die. It is very important to mention this. You cannot throw after doing a heavy jump attack, mainly because the plus frames are very inconsistent depending of the height of the attack, so sometimes you can throw them without any issues, or sometimes you whiff and you die. And even if they block or block string, remember guys, we can use our fireball to rebuff and do it again. And especially in the corner, this can be a really dangerous means of, because if they get wrong, they are going to eat arc throw or worse and combo. Hell, it's the only move I will highly recommend burning down cooldowns, because the high reward is really good, so it is worthy. These two things alone allow me to head into master rank with ease, because I will know how to open up my opponent more easily. Of course, in the master rank I will need to polish some things, because I was trying to throw them after doing a jumping attack and die because of that, but hey. And thanks for that, in August 12, I finally reached master rank. On 12th of August, I managed to head into the master rank. Basically, I got there in less than 5 weeks in my main account, which is kinda impressive because I kinda left in the overview of this game. But hold on a second, Moth. This video is almost out at the same time as Meg. What happened, Moth? Did you sleep in the job again? To be fair, I did sleep in the job because I started to work a 9 to 7 shifts, so yeah, my schedule is very busy, but that's not the real reason. The real reason behind all of this is because I didn't want to make the same mistake as last time in the bigger video. In that project, I was trying everything to reach S Plus back in July of 2024. Back then, the rank system was a lot more brutal than we have today, because back then, climbing up was really difficult, and very few people managed to head into master rank back then because it was the prestige. But the issue back then was that I was so focused in getting points to reach the goal, which kinda ends up shifting my plan around getting crystals and getting chicken wings instead of, improving. Besides, that wasn't first time hitting to this game, so setting this higher goal wasn't the best idea. So, in a nutshell, I was so focused in getting to this rank that I was learning strategies to get quick wins instead of, learning the game from scratch and trying to understand the fundamentals, how to play Granblue. Besides, I didn't even bother to ask for help. I didn't even check the Vera core back then, which could have helped me a lot to understand Vera and actually learning her game plan. As an end result, that video feels very incomplete, like I was just learning how to win and not how to play as Vera. Originally, this video was going to be the same. On August 12, I will just record some sets in my second account and call it a day. It will be 1 extra or 2 weeks of recording, but after heading to Master Rank, I feel like something was missing. Like, yeah, I got to Master Rank, but like, that's all? It is going to be another video of me just chasing the system, because reaching Master Rank is like just the beginning to turn yourself into an intermediate player, because this is the point where you start to polishing your aspects of your game plan and learn the game in more deep. So you know what, I decided that I want more. So after reaching my initial goal, I decided to push it further to see how far can actually go. I set up a new benchmark to hit 500 crystals, and boy, it was very rogue. The crystals are very similar to what is MR in Street Fighter 6 to keep it short, but in Granblue, once you are above 500, you can head match against more experienced players, but you have to be kinda quick because these crystals resets every 2 months. And this is the same reason why this video is gonna be rushed down in the 3rd week of October, because in these 2 months alone, I just realized that after hitting to Master Rank, I didn't know nothing about Versusia. I just scratched the surface once again. Now, to be fair, I understand the basics, but there's still a lot of new things to learn, because as soon as I head match against more competent players and really good ones, I realized that I need use bare bones. I don't have any game plan at all. And look, to be fair, and it's not to downplay myself, to get to Master Rank, you have to have a really good understand of the fundamentals of the game. But once you are in Master Rank, things change. Now, let's go back a little bit. The many things that worked, like zoning my opponent and abusing heavy lariat to attack them and up down, kinda worked there because most people around this rank like to smash a lot, but once you are in Master Rank, the playstyle of your opponents differ a lot, so some things might work in some of them and other things doesn't work at all. To put it simply, the main issue is that, for example, against a very defensive player, I wouldn't know how to open up and how to adapt quicker as the match goes on. To put it simply, my deck was bare bones. I was only having one option for one situation when I could have easily 4 options for one situation. I didn't know how to respond to different playstyles, and my game plan was bare bones, so basically I was relying too much in one option to try to open up my opponents. So, in order to improve, I need to start building up my own gameplay and refine some fundamentals, especially defense. What people most told me around late September is that walking is good for your health, you know? What I mean is that I was abusing specials to open up my opponent, which kinda doesn't work if my opponent is blocking and I don't know giving any reason to try to smash. The walking speed of Versusia established before is very slow, sure, but you still have big normals. What I missed is that instead of abusing heavy lariat, I will instead poking them with Tomb M or Far Heavy to force them to interact with me or try to intercept them if they are trying to close the gap. That also kinda helped in my pressure, because instead of abusing heavy lariat or heavy pillar, I will just run towards them and press 5L or 2L and doing the block string. Hell, I was even doing micro walks to try to grab them. This was really helpful because I wasn't burning down my cooldowns, and funny enough, by not trying to abuse my specials, it helped me a lot to use them in the correct situation, because if I wasn't burning down cooldowns, I was having an answer to any situation. This is what I meant by before. If they try to close the gap, I will use 2M, Nimbus medium or 5L, and also by walking a lot it helps me to reposition myself and gain advantage in the terrain, because I wasn't losing terrain just to rebuff safely. I was pushing away my opponent to the corner by using normals. It's kinda hard to explain with words, so I am kinda sorry if I don't trying to understand it well, but seeing this footage, you kinda get the idea. In the first matches on Master Rank, I realized my defense was very lacking. So in response, I did one of the most stupid shit I ever did during September, which was forcing myself to not use break counter. You know, the most important aspect of defense. Okay, let me explain. So the main idea originally was my friend told me to kinda not abuse break counter a lot and figure it out the timing of the delay of my opponent to try to escape or not to get baited, which for some reason my silly brain translated it to not use break counter, just sit there and try to figure out the timing of my opponents. As terrible that idea was, it kinda helped because I was figuring out my timings on my opponent, getting a better sense of when to smash and when to expect a bait or when just to hold my ground. Basically, it kinda helped, but that wasn't the point of, because break counter is basically your defense. But the point my friend was trying to say is that I shouldn't burden up quicker. If I can find a gap to fuzzy smash and get a block string going on, go for it. This goes back to our main point of our game plan, is to have different options to find the correct answer in one situation. Also, sometimes doing nothing, especially on ranking, forces your opponent to take bigger risks because blocking is very strong. So if you can tell when they're going for a throw, you can take your turn back. Having a good defense is very important, especially as Versusia, since most of your time is going to be spent blocking, but that doesn't mean you should block forever. Eventually you must take your turn back and figure out the perfect time to do it. Speaking of delay, is something I haven't figured out yet, even by earlier October. See, what's the big deal of delay buttons? Because a lot of people kinda fuzzy smash during block steams, hoping that one of their buttons kinda connects in a gap. With delayed or buttons, we can catch them off guard. And it can be even used if they are even fuzzy matching, because sometimes some people really looks for that small window to start taking their comeback, and then boom, we punish them for it. Honestly, delaying buttons is really good. Also, delaying throws is really good also, because most people are kinda fuzzy matching too in order to avoid hitting throw. So if you delay enough your throw, you are going to grab them 100% of the time. Of course, as I said before, it's something I haven't figured out yet, so I'm really sorry if I haven't explained well. Other than that, I was polishing my mixo because I kinda got it wrong. See, I said before that you shouldn't grab after doing a jump attack because you get very different plus frames depending on the height of the attack, which translates hitting the crab earlier or hitting counter hit. And what friend mentioned it before also is that it's kinda worth it to burn down the cooldowns, because as mentioned before, it's our best offensive tool. Also, I start to do it also raw, because I start to notice most people touch spot my Nimbus. So I used to it raw or delete it a little bit. And trust me, this kinda wins games sometimes. Of course, I had to kinda figure it out also the main game, because I hit the throw sometimes, but other times it doesn't work. So yeah, it's kinda hard to explain, because it's like my opponent knows what to do. So I had to find a way to kinda fix that. On the other hand, I was polishing my mix-up because I got it wrong in the first time. See, I said before that you shouldn't grab after doing a jump heavy attack, because you get very different plus frames depending on the height of the attack. So it's kinda hard to hit a trick though consistently, because sometimes you can grab them without issue and other times they're going to grab you in counter, which is worse. So the idea here is landing to do a grab, but first doing the jump heavy attack to condition them, and then pressing 5L or 2L to check if they're blocking high or low. Or then you can just backdash and get a free with punish. Also, it's very important to mention that all the Nimbus with buff are safe jumps. What it means is that you should block during the jump, so you can bait also the piece and get a mythic punish combo. And I try to apply what my friend told me, that I should burn my 9 boss heavy more often in the corner, which led me to better results because I was forcing the opponent to interact with me. But all the mentioned before is kinda pointless if I not polish the biggest problem of my current game plan, which is that I don't abuse my plus frames. What I mean is that I always try to play a raw pre-counter and DP, because sometimes I was just run towards my enemy and just stop there waiting for a DP. But you kinda see the flaw in this logic, because I am not giving any reason to my opponent to use a Dragon Punch to punish me, because I am not forcing my pressure. So yeah, my friend just told me, look man, you cannot play around reversals and at the same time apply pressure. You like it or not, you have to eat a reversal in order to set a pressure, because if you're not pressing anything, your opponent is going to take the turn back. You shouldn't be afraid to just do a 6L, 2L, or use counter and grab them. Hell, even sometimes do a jump attack if you think they are going to intercept you with a 2M. So the point is that I need to use moves like 2L and use the plus frames to start my own offensive in mid-screen and in the corner, until my opponent represents a defensive option. The most important aspect that is going to be a current team from now on for forever is that I need more experience. Like right now, these are like the promise right away that I noticed, but some of them are going to take like many weeks to fix, or even months. Also, in these ranks, as I mentioned before, the most important part that you should focus is in your game plan, because as I mentioned before, so far I only have one layer of defensive and offensive, and other players have more. It's kinda hard to explain, but what it means is that with more experience I can find my options and what to do in certain scenarios. Also, it's very important to start building good ABs, but for a very unusual reason. I had to build good ABs so I can autopilot better. So if I can autopilot much better, I can focus more on what's going on exactly in a match to make a better decision based on my own judgment. But what I mean is that my journey to be a better intermediate player has begun, and it's hard to tell when it's going to end because, trust me, what I am trying to say is that my journey to be a better intermediate player has only begun, and trust me, it's really hard in which exactly time I'm going to achieve this goal, because one of the best ways to earn better experience is by asking friends who are above of your current level of skills to play friendly matches, because even if you lose, you can start getting a better understanding of what should a high level player look like. And the best of all, if you are friends with them, you can get a better feedback and even help on how to approach this type of situation and get better understanding of the game in general. I am going to admit, probably explain like shit this section, but trust me, the path to be a better player is hard, it's like a maze. There isn't a straight answer, it's a very complicated answer because there's a lot of factors you should focus. So take it easily, don't try to rush down progress. Progress is going to come along the way, so don't worry about it. And the most important of advice I can give you to anyone, and that even for me is hard to follow sometimes, I have to admit it, even for me, is that you shouldn't compare to others. Your own progress is your own progress. Some guys can learn quicker, others not. It's okay, don't worry about it. I'm really sorry if this video was very poorly structured, but I'm trying my best to be as brief as possible. The same thing applies to matchups. I'm going to try to be as brief as possible, otherwise we are going to be here another 6 hours. So keep in mind that originally this video was written in the wilderness patch, but is currently being recorded at the beginning of October. So I cannot say much about Mech right now because it only has been 1 week since the release. But honestly, this matchup feels like Versusia ones. Okay, let's go back. So as I mentioned before, the idea of the video occurred to me around the earlier of August, where I started recording in my alt account the footage. So let's go quick about wilderness. Honestly, this one Versusia wins. It's really easy to play a keep out game. However, the main issue I face against wilderness is that the risk reward is in his favor in a lot of situations. So usually he needs 1 hit to win the game. Just be mindful of that because you have to play keep out. But once you learn how to react to his mix-ups just like in Tekken 8, it becomes a lot easier. Fairy is another matchup that Versusia wins. Heavy Pillar shuts her down, and since the Fairy has terrible defense, keeping her in the corner, it isn't her. You have to be very mindful of baiting prey counters. Unlike Meterra turns this fucking game into Toho 8. Literally, every time I fight against her, I can hear Erin's team playing in the background. So you might think that Heavy Pillar can shove her down. It is, but the issue is that you have to get close, like really close, and as mentioned before, she can just spam projectiles, so it's really hard. And honestly, I start to gain a hit against Butterfly. Now, keep in mind, you can still win, but it's really hard. This is a matchup that Versusia loses hard. Getting your life sucks, man. Versusia just stomps her. I really dislike Long Wayne. Like, this is basically the knowledge check character. If you don't know any of his knowledge checks, which by the way is a lot, you lose the game. And also it doesn't help that he's the only character of the game to have a backward stash. I forgot to mention, there is another matchup that Versusia loses, but it is more manageable. See, the main issue is that riding free is your main enemy, the main tool that Bea has to shut down a lot of our moves. So if you can't manage to play around her, you can at least do something in a neutral game. However, you never want to be in the corner, otherwise that's a GG's. 2B is an interesting matchup because in theory you can win most of the iterations in neutral, but once in the corner it becomes really hard. Now, believe me or not, but this is another matchup that Versusia wins slightly because, well, we also have big normals, but it's kinda more harder to challenge her. But main weakness of 2B is that it's very easy to spot the flowchart. So once you spot the flowchart, that's a GG's. Special mention to Virra because holy shit, this is the only character you had to switch between playing as a Sooner and playing a very defensive game. Never let her get the install. The main thing about Virra is that most of the player base plays the game in a very erratic way. So most of the team you can think, he can't do that. It's a very bad idea. To them, it's a very good idea. So be mindful of that. Well guys, thank you for watching this video. So far, I ended up loving Versusia more than Virra because honestly, Versusia feels in this very niche category I like, which is, I don't know how to explain it because basically I like having big buttons and the fact I can make up combos in the fly because most of the time I have to know my optimal rules, sure, but sometimes there are times that I just have to improvise a move just to kill my opponent, which really helps a lot. Also, I feel like the Versusia has very few lossy matchups. I mean, Meterra is one of the worst matchups it has, but what I mean is that I'm feeling I play a complete character. I mean, yeah, Bea is a very bad matchup for me, sure, but at least I can do something against her too. By the end of September, I started to play other characters. I played 2B, I really like her. Honestly, Catalina is the chess keys character I really like. She's my second main, mainly because I spend more time with Versusia, so Versusia is my favorite child right now. Like I said, it's really hard to me to explain why I like certain characters in fighting games. I just fight with them. But with Versusia, I just feel comfortable. Something clicked with me as her. Honestly, it's the only character so far that motivates me enough to improve. Like right now in October, I finally managed to reach 400 crystals in less than 4 days, which is wow. But yeah, I hope you like this video. I'm really sorry it is very poorly structured. Maybe I'm going to make a video about mech later, but I like to wait another month to do it because right now it's a character that is going between backwards and forwards. And honestly, I would like to make more content about Granblue in general. Unfortunately, my schedule doesn't allow me to upload more than 2 videos per month, but let's see how things goes. So yeah, see you guys and have a great day. See ya!